Okay. So Michelle, would you please introduce our program on the Siuslaw Watershed?
Well, I would be happy to. As most of you know, Aaron and Richie and I all live in the Siuslaw. And we're super stoked because a couple of our cherished daughters, nieces, are working with the Siuslaw Watershed Council. So we've got Rosemary Pazdral and Mizu Kinney Burris. And so these two ladies have been educated outside of our state. Rosemary went to Brandeis for her first 4 years of college, and then I think you did your doctoral studies at OSU. Is that correct, Rosemary? Yeah.
Master's at UW and then my PhD at UW. Right.
And Mizu went to school at Carleton in what is that state, Mizu?
Minnesota.
One of those
Thank
cold
you.
ones, but yes,
Thank
Minnesota.
And then went off to Seattle to live and came back to Deadwood, has 3 kids and lives with her family here. It's really wonderful to be to live in this community that has sent our kids off, and some of them come back with some skills that really benefit our entire Deadwood community and of course the entire watershed. So I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary and Mizu, and we are all very fortunate to have these stellar humans presenting to us tonight. I think Rosemary, you're gonna share your screen.
Yep, and cool. I have permission to do that. Does that look right, everybody?
Looks good.
That looks right.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all for having the Watershed Council at your meeting today, and for having me. I'm Rosemary, as Michelle mentioned. I'm the director of the Siuslaw Watershed Council, and I'm also here with Mizu Burris, who is my colleague, and she will chime in as she feels necessary, but for the most part, I will be speaking. So I am coming to this talk as a representative of the Watershed Council, but I also interact with the Siuslaw Watershed in other ways in my life. I grew up here and I studied it for my PhD. And so I'm a student of this watershed as well. And I'm sort of bringing all those perspectives to how I think about the watershed. To introduce the Watershed Council, or SWC, to those of you who may not be familiar with it, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, non-regulatory organization. It's our mission to support the sound economic, social, and environmental use of natural and human resources in the Siuslaw River Basin. And we encourage cooperation among private and public watershed entities to promote the awareness and understanding of watershed functions by implementing total watershed. Also, part of our governing vision is include respect and reflect a broad range of community interests and stakeholders in our work, and thereby leverage our differences. In this presentation, I'll talk about some of the basic environmental and historical information in the Siuslaw, the water users in the basin, threats to the watershed, water quality concerns, and stewardship of the watershed. The SWC published short films about some of the restoration and conservation work going on here, so I'll also play a few of those at the end. So the Siuslaw watershed is encompassed by the ancestral homelands of the Siuslaw people who have stewarded the watershed for generations and continue to do so today. The river's traditional name is Siuslaw. And for those of you interested in learning more about environmental stewardship by local tribes, I really encourage you to check out the Abundance story map on the CC website, or read the headliner article of the SWC's recent newsletter, which is on our website. And and written by our board president and Honest tribal member. The watershed is located in the Central Oregon Coast Range, and it drains the western slope directly into the Pacific Ocean at the mouth of the river near Florence. It encompasses a total area of 773 square miles, extending all the way from the Lorain Hills and Triangle Lake. This map shows the stream network in the Siuslaw watershed. There are a total of more than 5,000 stream miles. This is the main stem of the Siuslaw River extending up towards Lorain, and then this is the Lake Creek arm extending up towards Central Lake. Coastal watersheds in Oregon are unique relative to other watersheds because they're rain dominated, meaning that they receive all of their precipitation as rain rather than snow. And that has a lot of implications for the seasonality of stream flows and the potential impact. There's also a strong marine influence on the weather patterns here. Areas near the coast receive a lot more precipitation than the upriver headwater areas. And underlying geology of the watershed is sandstone, which is a sedimentary classification. And then for lots of reasons that I won't get into right now, the sort of top-down and bottom-up influence of climate and geology in the Siuslaw watershed create river systems and patterns that are relatively flashy, meaning that they rise and fall quickly. In terms of land ownership, we're looking at a map that shows broad categories across the Siuslaw watershed and also includes the coastal lake right down here to demonstrate the strong bias of urban and private ownership along the coast and around Florence. And so looking at this map, you also see the patchwork landscape characterized by the forest surrounding the Siuslaw main stem, and that is predominantly owned by federal agencies, namely the Forest Service and the BLM. In total, the Forest Service owns approximately 26% of the watershed, and the BLM owns approximately 27%. There's also a significant tract of state-owned land right here south of the Lake State tributary. Private land, which is symbolized in the sand color, is again predominantly along the coast, but also along the river systems in the upriver areas. So you can see these sand sort of spans along the stream. So this is a map of soils characterized by the NRCS as likely to have wetland conditions or hydric. You can see that wetland soils in the Siuslaw are really concentrated in the valleys and flatter areas of the watershed, with larger expanses of them occurring near Florence and Lorain. Here, down here.
What is NRCS?
Natural Resources Conservation. The kind of arm of the USDA.
Mm-hmm.
Water users in the Siuslaw correspond really closely to the map of land ownership that we were looking at earlier. Most of the residential use is obviously occurring in more populated areas like Florence and Lorain. The Florence municipal water source is actually not directly from the river, but from either groundwater or a nearby lake. But even more than human users, the biggest cause of fluctuation in water availability is the water cycle itself. So this is an illustration of the water cycle showing how water enters the watershed through precipitation and exits the watershed through runoff, evaporation, and transpiration, which is a word for plants exhaling water vapor through their stomata. And so evaporation and transpiration can account for an enormous proportion of water use in the watershed, depending on factors like temperature and humidity and species composition. And then other animals, in addition to humans, are also a major water user in the watershed. As an example, this map shows coho spawning and rearing habitat in the Siuslaw. So the lighter blue is spawning habitat and the darker blue is rearing habitat. But what you can't see here is how this compares to other coastal watersheds. If you could see that, you could tell just how the Siuslaw has a particularly high density of And looking at threats to the Siuslaw watershed. From the perspective of the Watershed Council, the primary threats to the Siuslaw watershed are resource extraction, land development, and climate change. And before I get much further into that, I thought I'd play a little video featuring one of our community members and restoration partners with the Confederated Tribes of the Siuslaw and Siuslaw Indians. I'm going to go ahead.
Is there audio?
Are you not hearing the audio?
Nope, no audio.
I don't hear it.
Well, I don't know how to make that work. That's beyond my capabilities.
You might need to share audio, which I think you can do when you do the share screen.
Mm.
You could also send the link and one of us could try it too, whichever works for you.
Let's see. Oh, here we go.
Yay.
It seems to be working.
Both sides of my family go back a long ways in the Siuslaw Basin. My mom's side is the tribal side. Siuslawan Kwakwakwichinhich, Siuslawan Shla'ai. That just means I'm a Siuslaw, Caucasian Lawamqua person from Siuslaw territory. Also on my dad's side, they came over in the 1880s, 5 brothers that came over and settled up Indian Creek. And I work for my tribe today, trying to maintain that connection. So this lake in particular, being Takanich, had a village site that is dated to be about 8,000 years old. Our culture, it developed in this place. And when Euro-Americans first came to this place, people looked around and saw utopia. You know, this is an untouched place. It's just gorgeous, and you know, it has all these untapped resources. Those resources weren't untapped. That was just a well-managed land. I think that is kind of traditional ecological knowledge, how to properly actually steward a place. You learn that by living for generations in a place. This island is really just a sanctuary for kind of rarer native plants like cobra lilies, the wild cranberries and bog blueberries. Living out here in this place that we had to travel by boat to, and you know, seems really remote and hard to get to. Somehow invasives find their way here, so we want to try to keep that stuff out. Everything, you know, as native as possible. Great-grandma used to say that her dad used to be able to catch enough fish in a week just to feed the family all year long. Literally, you could walk across the backs of the salmon. It was just completely full. I'd like to see it someday. Everybody, no matter what walk of life you're in, would like to see the salmon numbers come up. The river was actually called Xato. It wasn't named Siuslaw. Siuslaw is the tribe, it's the people that live there. For me or any of our tribal membership to be able to go to meetings and express those cultural ideals and how we feel that these lands and waters should be managed is an honor, and it's amazing to see that difference.
Okay, so you can see my screen. Okay. So the part of that video that I kind of wanted to highlight is when Jesse was explaining how the watershed has always been managed. It's just a matter of how it's been managed. Most of the threats to the Siuslaw watershed, at least those relevant to the work of the Watershed Council, occurred following Euro-American settlement in the mid-1800s. Some of the first Euro-Americans explorers arrived in the basin in the 1840s, and in 1875, the Oregon legislature opened the Siuslaw Basin for white settlement. And excessive resource extraction and land development primarily resulted from agricultural and timber harvest practices, as well as overfishing. So there's intensive.
Can I ask what is splash damming?
Oh, I'm gonna talk about it. So there was intensive timber harvest going on, which resulted in widespread road building and rail lines, as well as splash damming, which is what is seen in this picture. And so splash damming was used to transport massive log rafts down the river. And the process was efficient and fairly direct, but it did have environmental effects that are still visible in the watershed today, including scoured channels and exposed bedrock. Splash damming involves building big wooden crib dams and moving logs behind them upstream of the dam, and then releasing all the water and the logs at once. And so there were more than 20 of these along the Siuslaw and the main tributaries. This is an image of salmon fishers on the Siuslaw. Co-populations in the Siuslaw in the 1800s were estimated to be around 200,000. And for some perspective, there were around 4,000 to 5,000 last fall. And then finally, agriculture. Much of the initial white settlements and landscape clearing was for agriculture, primarily dairies in the beginning. Over time, for various reasons, dairy cattle started making less sense, and farmers transitioned more to cattle for beef. There aren't any dairies left in the Siuslaw now, and actually relatively little livestock agriculture relative to some other watersheds in the coastal area. However, again, we do still see the impact, primarily in riparian areas with inside banks and homogeneous or non-native. This also led to a major reduction or alteration in available wetland habitat. So this map shows the historic estuary of the Siuslaw in tan and the current tidal wetland area 3. And the final threat that I would mention in the Siuslaw watershed is about climate change. So coastal watersheds in Oregon, including the Siuslaw, are expected to respond to climate change in observable ways, including extended summer dry seasons and more intense winter wet seasons. And we're also vulnerable to wildfire, even without climate change, and then climate, of course, only intensifies.
Rosemary,
Yeah.
have you ever heard that the Siuslaw forest used to be called the asbestos forest?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we were more impervious to wildfire back in the day, and that has really changed.
Yeah. I'm assuming you're talking about for more reasons than just climate change, but also other anthropogenic reasons.
Yeah, what was that word you just used? What?
Anthropogenic,
Which means?
originating from human. And
Okay, yes, absolutely.
yeah. So water quality and aquatic habitat concerns are a specific impact of some of those threats to the watershed. The timber extraction and agricultural practices of the 19th and 20th centuries, and some that continue to this day, have left some pretty inhospitable conditions in the streams and rivers of the Siuslaw. The concerns that I've listed here are really intertwined and the result of things like loss of riparian vegetation, stream channelization, road building and road use, splash damming, and removing large wood from streams. One of these water quality concerns that I'll sort of zoom in on is stream temperature. So here are two maps on the left looking at stream temperature for the last, well, it's between 1993 and 2011. So modeled historic water temperatures in August indicates the main stem Siuslaw was often inhospitable to rearing coho, so the extensive tributary network provided considerable cold water. So you can see on the left, this red is indicating that, yeah, on the main stem, it's too warm to be really a good habitat for coho. But up here, there's quite a bit, and they can go up there for some cold water refuge. And then on the right, this is the projected surface water temperature for 2040, indicating that several major tributaries in the Siuslaw will be too hot to support rearing coho. So all of these red, larger tributaries. So I've talked a lot about historic and current conditions leading to threats and concerns in the Siuslaw, and a little bit about opportunities that there are for stewardship. And I put in this image of a spider on a web in the Siuslaw, in one of the Siuslaw still marshes, to sort of symbolize the long-held collaborations between conservation organizations in the Siuslaw that are working together to restore ecological function, and how we each sort of take a unique role in that endeavor. One of the Siuslaw Watershed Council collaborations is with the Siuslaw Coho Partnership, or SCP, which is a group of about 10 local organizations working together to implement restoration projects in the basin. And we use these 5 primary strategies. So we add large wood back into streams to create more in-stream habitat complexity and refuges for salmon and other species. We revegetate riparian areas to increase shade, improve water quality, and promote natural recruitment of large wood additions to the streams. We reconnect and protect floodplains in both tidal and upriver environments, which increases the availability of off-channel habitat. And then we upgrade bridges and culverts to improve water quality and increase connectivity. And so I was going to play another video now that talks a little bit about floodplain reconnection and its benefits in these coastal environments. Yeah. So there might not be sound again. Can you hear anything?
Yeah, there's sound.
Oregon was kind of a happy accident, I like to say. I just fell in love with the place, and so I wanted to live here and work here. One of the amazing things about coho actually is they can go several hundreds of miles inland to spawn, and they're not spawning in these main streams, they're spawning in smaller tributaries. These small fish in the wintertime, when you get those high water flows and that increased velocity, they need refuge. 5 Mile Bell feeds into Taconich Lake, which is one of the biggest lakes on the Oregon coast, and it's a very big stronghold for coho. So by reconnecting the floodplain, these little coho can access areas where there's going to be a lot more insects, there's going to be a lot more food for them, there's going to be a lot more shelter. It's going to create those nice little cold water habitat where they can hang out and be safe. The reason that we do a fish relocation is we have a lot of heavy equipment and machinery that's working around it. When they start filling the channel, we don't want any fish to be present in the water. These are ESA listed coho, so we're trying to protect them to make sure that we hurt as few of them as possible. our project is not only restoring habitat for fish, it's also restoring for waterfowl, for lots of other animals. People in this area should care about this site because we are returning it to its original condition and we're making it accessible to the public. We can ensure that this habitat is still here. That'll help ensure that the number of coho and other animals are still around for future generations to enjoy.
So Mizu or Rosemary, the reason that you're doing this work is because of logging? Is that kind of situation that you just showed in that clip? Is that the direct response from timber harvesting?
That project actually was on historically a cattle pasture that no longer was in use for agriculture, but was still had the impact of agriculture. So it was like a really homogeneous field. It had a ton of invasive plants around it. It was really channelized channel. It was without any riparian vegetation. That's where that particular area was restored.
And that stream had been pushed to the side of the valley where we believe it used to inhabit the whole valley floor and really be dynamic and changing all the time. And for agricultural use of that valley, that stream was sort of physically pushed over to the side and channelized so that it was deep down in and couldn't access that floodplain and build habitat.
Mm-hmm. And all that equipment, how long does it take for the area to recover from that kind of activity?
I mean, a long time to be like, sort of, I think, fully functioning natural processes, which is the goal of that kind of restoration. But incredibly quickly, I mean, the next season, you have a difference in the number of species that are there, and both plant ant species and animal species, and like sort of food. It's really incredible. It's amazing how quickly it responds. And creates a much more diverse habitat than was what was there the year before. So it's interesting. I mean, it's a very, very I don't know what it sort of the wrong word is, invasive process, I guess. You're sort of flattening the valley. But in terms of the response, you get next season improvements in habitat diversity and quantity.
Uh-huh. And how do you remove the invasive species?
Well, it's really it is different on each site because it depends on what the main invasive species are. On that site we were just looking at, though, the main invasive species that was keeping other native species from growing was reed canary grass. And so part of what the machinery was doing there was digging up the reed canary grass, and you have to dig pretty deep to get those roots. And so it was scraping off the top where that reed canary grass was, and grabbing it and piling it and putting it underneath a bunch of other soil. And then reestablishing, we planted hundreds of thousands of native plants out there afterwards, so to get those established instead of the reed canary grass.
Thanks for that.
Could you, I'm not sure if you're still in the middle of the presentation, but could you characterize the effects of, say, clear-cut logging on the watershed in terms of the industrial forestry operations that do take place?
No, I don't think I could. I don't think I have. I mean, do you mean like scientifically?
Well, I mean, just the major effects. What would you say are the major effects of the, relatively large scale industrial forestry?
Yeah, I think erosion is one of the major ones. Like the lack of solar insulation and large wood recruitment. So, I mean, shade on streams and riparian areas, and then the availability of large wood to contribute to stream and in-stream complexity.
What about soil fertility? I don't know what the timber, what the cycle time is now. It usually is going down. So how long is it between harvests, and how is that affecting soil fertility, would you say?
I'm not an expert on that, so with no idea. Musi, do you have any ideas?
I mean, just generally, I think it's pretty commonly acknowledged that soil fertility goes down with, you're extracting things that grow on that, just like in a garden, when you grow something and you pull that, that vegetation, and that vegetation has used nutrients from the soil. So you're pulling nutrients from the soil there. And I think that that's true in a forest as well. So I think that is a problem for soil nutrients. And the other thing that has happened is with habitat decline and overfishing, nutrients that used to be brought into the watershed from outside in the form of ocean going critters like salmon and lamprey, that used to be pretty well distributed into the up into the forests, even, is not happening like it used to. So you're not getting that replenishment that did happen.
Thanks.
Damn it.
Well, I actually don't have, much more of substance to share here. There's another video I could share about restoration work and conservation and history, how it all wraps into the history of the Siuslaw watershed, but unnecessary if just depending on where people want to go with it.
Well, we really only have like 15 or 20 minutes for questions, but how long is that video? Because it sounds like it could be informative.
Yeah, 3 minutes or so.
Does everybody feel like that would be time well spent? Yeah.
So,
The Siuslaw River was second only to the Columbia in the amount of fish. Literally, you could walk across the backs of the salmon. It was just completely full. And those resources weren't untapped. That was just a well-managed land.
It got down in 1995 to less than 4,000.
Without us managing these things like salmon and the habitat of salmon, we're going to lose part of ourselves and our history here also.
Every salmon steelhead season, I go out with my dad and my son and my daughter, and it's just part of our life.
When they're alive underwater, you can like watch them change from red to green. It looks awesome.
What makes the Siuslaw able to be restored is not just the landscape and not just its ability to be what it once was. I also think it's related to the people that live here and their desire to actually change this and make this because they have a strong connection to this place.
I do see that the specific actions that are taken make a big difference. If people are able to work together, pool their ideas, pool their resources, projects are more effective, they're more meaningful.
So we're trying to restore all the processes in order for the watershed to be a healthy system and keep it usable for not just fish and other animals, but for us as well.
The coho play a part in feeding the people and feeding the land. We need to take care of the Siuslaw, where a lot of salmon are able to thrive.
Being from a logging background, the stream restoration work provide a lot of industry for people. And that's why I think it's key to invest in these type of projects.
It's going to be landowners, it's going to be the tribe, it's going to be the kids that grew up here that are going to be the ones who can make a change here.
We all are like a big family out here. We're putting in the effort to make it a home for many species instead of just a few.
Well, I thank you so much for that. I just wanted to acknowledge that the work you do is a component of a healthy watershed. And the work that we're trying to do is to stop harms that that are still occurring. So, you know, we really are trying to stop spray. We're coming kind of around a back way with our new Protect Our Watersheds Bill of Rights. But, you know, without stopping this kind of harm, our kids and your efforts, you can't have we don't believe you can have a healthy watershed. We just feel like that has to stop. So, I mean, while I really appreciate what you do and I can see the benefits to our watershed, and I literally can see them because I live here, without advocates like us that really take on this harsh reality of corporate industry, corporate assault, well, you know, you're gonna be doing your work until forever. And I would hope that someday we wouldn't even need watershed councils. And I'm sure you think the same thing, you know. So, but we're all doing what we do. We come from it from different places.
Yeah, I think all pieces are important parts of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, as being, John and I have been somewhat involved with the Watershed Council, and we both, and also part of the the community rights in County, and I just see them both being important, and coming to it at different angles, but I see both angles as being really important ways of helping our community and protecting the watershed. I've just been really impressed with how the Siuslaw Watershed Council is organized, and the outreach and getting young people involved and seeing how important it is to protect the watersheds. I've just been really impressed with them. So it's good to see both of you here to present. Thank you.
Good to see you too, John.
Thank you for presenting.
More questions for our guests, our presenters? Yeah, David.
Yeah, just curious, what are you involving reintroduction of beavers into watersheds in the Siuslaw as a part of your work, or what's happening with that?
Do.
Sure. I love beavers, so I'll talk. Yeah, so yes, the answer is yes and no. Yes, the work that we do definitely, I mean, beavers are one of those species that is much less numerous here than they were. And just like fish, just like lamprey, just like many species. And we want them to be more numerous. I think they do a huge amount of work to steward the watershed on their own. And so a lot of the projects that we do like encourage beaver habitat. We plant a lot of food that beaver, will eat. We slow the water down, which makes it easier for beaver to actually build, dams that hold, things like that. We have not yet participated in reintroducing beaver, taking a beaver from a location and putting it into a different location. It turns out that's a very, it's a difficult process. It's not always successful. And that hasn't been our expertise. We're more so far have been trying to create habitat that is, that beaver can thrive in. And we do end up usually finding that beaver come to that habitat and live there. At that 5 Mile Bell project that one of the videos showed that had all that earthwork and stuff, in that valley, that was done over several years, and probably in the 3rd year after restoration, in section of it, a beaver had created a dam that spanned the whole valley pretty much, and it was able to hold for several years, that dam location. And now it's creating more in different parts of the valley. So long answer to say, beaver are definitely a part of our considerations in restoration, but we haven't physically relocated beaver ourselves or anything like that.
Yeah, thanks. An added question related to that is, are you finding it difficult to work with landowners in getting acceptance of beavers coming into their, private land, and then, ways to mitigate the problems that beavers can cause?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of resistance because beaver change the land, and people are happy to think that they're the only ones that should get to do that. And so I think we do get a lot of people who, sort of want to have the beaver, but don't want to have any changes to the land. Either the plants they planted or where the water goes on their land and things like that. So, but there are a lot of strategies, there's a lot of compromises that people can make that they don't necessarily know about. So we are looking at increasing our sort of outreach and education stuff around beaver and living with beaver and how to do that. So we hope to do that more, coming up, I'd say in the next couple of years. So, yeah.
Rob, you're muted, love.
Hate it when that happens. So there was a question in the chat. Does the Siuslaw Watershed Council work with or interact with other councils in the area, like the Lincoln County Watershed Group? And also, do you have industrial partners in your watershed council?
We do interact with other watershed councils. It varies depending on what kinds of projects are going on and the members of the watershed council and things like that. But many of the watershed councils along the coast, especially, are doing really similar work. So it's really helpful to have that work with others. And do we have industrial partners? Was that the question?
Yes.
We don't have any industrial partners on the Siuslaw Coho partnership. Nobody is represented, no industrial groups are represented there. Some of our restoration projects, we do work with industrial companies because, for example, they might own the adjacent land where we need to get access to our restoration site. So we, make agreements with them. And historically, Mizu, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, historically, we've had industrial representation on the Watershed Council board. We've had times when we've worked with industry on specific projects on industrial land. So yes, we have had a lot of interaction. I mean, our goal as a council is to try and work with all groups in the, that have an interest in the watershed, both because of the land in the watershed or out, just interest in other ways. So there have been there has been a lot of industrial involvement in the past, but currently, actually, there's not at the moment right now. So,
is it possible from your perspective on ecological trauma to the land to broach the subject with industrial timber about spray? I mean, do you ever bring that up? Because I happen to think that the two of you in your personal lives would probably not feel so stoked about poisons in the watershed. I'm just wondering if you ever feel like you can make that foray, because it seems to me like half the work that we're doing in this time is talking to people who don't agree with us and trying to hear each other and make conversation and dialogue about how can we work together and how far can you come to where I am and how much can I attend to what your perspective is.
I mean, I'll take a little go and then Rosemary, go for it. I like, we don't, we don't push industrial timber on spray stuff. And part of that is because that's a very contentious issue. We are trying to work from a place of consensus and collaboration and as an organization. And so that's not our organization's, that's not our MO. Now, it actually couldn't be without changing our, sort of changing how we think of ourselves and act. Now, that's totally possible, just like any other change, but that's why we don't do that. We don't push that right now because conversations shut off really quickly about any way of working with them then. And we do have some good productive things that come out of, maintaining dialogue with industrial timber. So, Rosemary, do you want to add anything? Other thoughts?
No, I think that covers it. So,
I would like to know if we consider 100% of the interventions needed to restore and protect the watershed, how much of a percent is at kind of a governmental level, the government will have to intervene and provide money or whatever, and how much is a grassroots effort of people getting together and weeding out the invasive species and so on, and what's the land in between those two percentages?
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. I think it takes, as we kind of mentioned, I think it takes all the different entities and all the different actions. And so I don't think grassroots actions by themselves can do it. I don't think that government imposition by themselves can do it. So I think it has to be, coming from all directions or, sort of pushed into all those areas. But percentage wise of importance, I don't know. Rosemary?
It's so intertwined. I'm thinking about the native plant distribution program, which is very much a resident space, like a grassroots sort of initiative. People get the native plants, take them to their properties and put in the labor to plant these native species in the riparian areas. But that is mostly funded by public entities. So I think there's lots of ways of looking at it. I wouldn't say that any kind of, government agendas are really being pushed on us. Like a lot of the funding opportunities that we take advantage of at the Watershed Council that are either state or federal are in line with the council's vision as well.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't say that, oh, half the work has to be done by government, or half the work has to be done by grassroots?
I mean, the people doing the work are living in the watershed and very much proponents of watershed health and committed to the positive outcomes for the watershed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know how to just separate all of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a tangled web of roots, I guess.
Yes, it is.
Any other questions for Mizu or Rosemary? Okay, David.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about scoured stream beds and down to bedrock. And just curious if we're familiar with a number of coast range streams that are down to bedrock now. And do you think any were in that down to bedrock long term before white settlers, the trappers that took out the beaver and so forth, then dams blew out and that kind of thing. Just curious if you have any historical perspective on what were the conditions of coast range streams prior to the trappers taking out the beaver.
Mizu, do you have any like beaver specific information on that?
Not necessarily. I mean, is old there's survey data from 1880 that talks about, some that gives some hints on to stream condition and stuff, but it not, they don't relate it to beaver in that case, as far as I know. But they were, they talked about a lot more complex systems than what we see today, sort of a lot messier valley bottoms, a lot more complex stream systems with vegetation and stuff like that. And, looking at other parts of the country where beavers have either, weren't so eradicated or have been reestablished for a lot longer, those are the kinds of systems that they help maintain. So I don't know of any specific Siuslaw data about that, about that, like the links watershed conditions with the beaver. But I think it makes a lot of sense that the beaver did help maintain the more complex systems.
Well, thank you again for your presentation. This is very informative. Really appreciate you coming and spending the time with us. I want to recap a couple of announcements before everyone goes. I've put in the chat the information for the webinar Wednesday on water and watersheds. That's 6 o'clock on Wednesday. Those are the folks that are there. If you want the URL or the link, email info@ORCRN, the Oregon Community Rights Network, to get the link for the webinar. Also, we meant to ask people if they're willing to help us with tabling at the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference at PILC. We will have a table for Community Rights Land County there. And Katie is organizing our tabling. And so her email address is in the chat. So if you can help us, please do.
And that's March. That's March 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Is that right, Katie? 3rd and 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
3rd, 4th, 5th.
You're muted, Katie.
Just saying that we're tabling on Friday, the 3rd and March the 4th.
Good. Any other last?
Yes. Yes, I have an announcement. It's a little off course, but it's about House Bill 2515, or is everyone aware that the, a Senate, let's see, a representative proposed to undo ballot measure 7 from 1980, which rescinds the not building nuclear power plants until there's a federal waste repository. They want to do away with that and be able to build nuclear power plants in Oregon. And they're claiming that it's green and all this garbage. They're lying. And a lot of people are coming to the fore and making public comments, and people can do it still. We can send written statements, and I'll put it in the chat. Whoops. Until we have 48 hours from 3 o'clock this afternoon. So until Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, if you want to send comment.
What was the House bill again? House Bill 2015, or what was it?
2215, 2215.
Okay, well, thank you
Did
for
it
that.
make it? Did it make it? I don't think it made it. Oh gosh.
Not yet.
You know what? I accidentally erased it because I had it highlighted because I wanted to make a copy of it.
We can find
So
it.
you want me to write it again?
Yeah, sure.
Or not? I mean, I can. Anyway, anybody have a
People
question
will be able
about
to
it?
find it.
Sorry?
No, go ahead. I think people will be able to find the information on the bill.
Okay, so House Bill 2215. Huh.
Thanks, Gwen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, thanks, everyone. It's been great spending time with you. Hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday and at PILC on March 3rd for our panel. And then again, about a month from now on the 20th of March.
And thanks for your presentation, you guys. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you both.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm trying to put something in the chat, so can you leave the chat open for a couple of minutes?
Sure.
I found the name of that lawsuit is Held, HELD versus the state of Montana. And the climate kids, whose name you said earlier, Rob, I just call them the kids suing the government.
Okay.
They've asked to be interveners in that suit, and that was granted. So they are part of that, and they're really promoting it as a really big event. It's sometime in June. I didn't find the date yet.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys down the road. Thanks again for being here, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.